Welcome to Obscure Christian Beliefs. This is the one who walks in the fire. The Furnace Trilogy, Revelation, Daniel, and Ezekiel. I wanted to do this one because of a sermon I heard this morning. All right, let me tell you about something that ties three passages together. This is something that, once you may have already seen it. If you have not seen it before, and once you know about it, you'll never forget it. If you take Daniel 3, Ezekiel 1, and Revelation 1, and you set them side by side, there is an obvious pattern that jumps out so strongly that if you haven't seen it before, it's almost like awkward. You're like, oh, yeah, of course. So all three of these are describing the same presence. Not just the same person, but they're describing the same experience, the same moment, the same, event, the unfolding in three different lives, of course, across centuries and empires, and really across different levels of consciousness at different times, in kind of the human history. But in all three cases, it's the moment when the divine light breaks through the veil and you suddenly realize that the one in the fire is the one who is in me. Think about that. The one in the fire is the one who is in me. So let's start with Daniel, because that's where the fire is like literal. They were put into a literal furnace. You had Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, however you say it. And they are thrown into a furnace. And of course, you know the story. They're faithful under pressure, standing while the whole world, bows. And then the king looks and says, "Didn't we throw these 3 men into the fire? Why do I see 4? And the fourth looks like," this is the quote, "the Son of God." Okay. That moment right there, that's not mythology. That's not poetry. That's it's a historical event, and it's a spiritual fact. He shows up in the fire. Not before it, not instead of it, but in it. Okay, now hold that image, right? The fourth man walking around loose in the flames, and walk with me to Ezekiel, okay? Ezekiel doesn't see a man in a furnace. He sees a storm, right? It's a violent, whirring, burning storm coming out of the north. He sees wheels within wheels, flashes of lightning, all this crazy stuff, living creatures covered in fire. And above all of it, there's this man-like, figure. They're blazing and shining and radiant and stuff like metal heated white hot in a furnace. Same language, right? Same imagery, same presence, same vibe, I guess you could say. Ezekiel's describing the furnace from the outside. Daniel's describing the furnace from the inside. Okay, so far so good. Ezekiel from the outside, Daniel from the inside. Now look at Revelation 1. John turns to hear the voice behind him. We've talked about that in another recording. And he sees the Son of Man again. And how does he describe him? He says he has feet like bronze refined in a furnace, eyes like a flame of fire, face shining like the sun in its strength, a voice like the waters. So it's the same storm and the same fire, and it's the same fourth man. But there is a difference because it's a different stage. And here's a part that might be surprising when you hear it, but it's going to make total sense, I think. In Daniel, he stands with you in the fire. Remember, right? In Ezekiel, he appears through the fire. And in Revelation, he appears as the fire. So John is seeing what the others only, you can see, John is seeing what the others only kind of tasted, or, the others experienced it, but, to him, it's a more complete experience. It's the fullness of the divine self, which, of course, obviously, because we're talking about Revelation anyway. So the fullness of the whole divine self is revealed right at the center of human consciousness, where Jesus said it is. So this is a shock of Revelation 1. John discovers that the fire that he feared, right, is actually the fire that he needed. And the fire he needed is the fire that is Christ himself. So there's also a personal angle. Every disciple eventually walks into a furnace moment, maybe more than one. I'm sure you can think of your own examples. This is the moment when, everything that you felt like you were depending on kind of like burns away. The plans, illusions, your idea of how things are going to go, your sense of control over things, your sense of self-domination, management, your sense of being able to drive, control the government on your own shoulders, right? This is where the moment where all your old identities melt down and the heat forces you to face what's real. So just like Daniel and his friends, you'll find yourself thinking, okay, I thought this was going to destroy me. Seemed like it might, but then, you look up and suddenly you're not alone anymore, because of course you're not. The one in Revelation 1, the one with the flame in his eyes, the one with the sword of truth, the one whose voice is, like drowning out the other voices, the one who's standing there in the fire with you, right? Here's the twist. He doesn't put out the fire, he sanctifies it. He uses the furnace to burn away the bonds and the ropes and the fear and the old man, the false self. The only things that burn in the fire are the things that were never you. Does that make sense? He burns away the bonds, the ropes, the fears, the old man, the false self, the fleshly part of your experience in life, the fleshly part of your identity. All of that burns in the fire, and the things that are really you do not burn. Only the things that never were you. So Daniel saw him, walk in the flames. Ezekiel saw him radiating like the flames, and John saw that he is the flame. Okay? So I think once we understand that, Revelation stops being, a book about a disaster, and it becomes a book about transformation. So the furnace is not punishment, it's appointment. It's where God reveals himself, and where he's revealing us to ourselves. So when John, when John falls at his feet like a dead man, that's not defeat. That's the old man collapsing. That's the, as they say, the ego, or the false self, the false beliefs, the false memories, the false habits collapsing in the presence of the living principle. So the fourth man shows up every single time, in every age, in every soul. That step, and it steps into the fire with faith. Every soul that steps into the fire with faith. The fourth man shows up. Not even a lot of faith necessarily. A little bit of faith. Step into the fire with a little bit of faith, and the fourth man shows up every single time. And when he takes you, he kind of takes your hand and says, "Fear not, I am the first and the last." You realize something that you couldn't see before, which, is that the fire was not there to destroy you. It was there to reveal you, because the one who walks in the fire walks in you. So when you see him, whether in Revelations, like a blazing vision, or in a storm of light, or in a furnace, you're witnessing the same eternal truth. God does not meet you outside your trial. He meets you in it. And once he appears, the trial becomes the doorway. The trial is the doorway now to the unveiling of the divine self.